This is the Hope Not Note podcast,
where we answer your questions and share inspirational stories to fill your soul with hope.
Our mission is to empower hope to those who have been plagued by note.
I'm Dr. Dylan Caswell.
And I'm Brandi.
And we're here to bring you out of the note and into hope.
Welcome to the Hope Not Note podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have episodes for you every single week on Wednesdays, so I hope you continue to tune in. While you're listening, maybe you can hit subscribe if you haven't yet so that you get the notification every time we release an episode.
Multitask?
Yeah, why not? Unless you're driving. Don't
Unless
do
you're
that.
driving.
But they can multitask.
True.
It's just one little button.
Yeah.
We're going to dive right into our question. Our question is from a listener named Amelia, and she asks, I've heard you say that every injury is a brain injury. Can you please explain this?
Wow, definitely a statement that needs more explanation, right?
Yes.
Because what we mean by that, and I stand by that, is not that every injury is a traumatic brain injury.
Correct.
Or every injury is a concussion or along those lines. But every experience of an injury lives within the nervous system housed in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
In the book, we go through the example of World War II with Dr. Henry Beecher. And it's a beautiful example, a powerful example to demonstrate this point that every injury is a brain injury in the sense of every injury impacts the neurological system. So Dr. Henry Beecher was a field medic in World War II. And as a field medic, you're going out during the battle as it's happening. So just envisioning that environment, it's high stakes. It's life or passing. It's a lot of chaos happening. And his job was basically to give them an injection of morphine or a powerful opioid to be able to get them off the battlefield and get more evaluation. What ended up happening is that they ran out of the morphine, but they had saline left. And he said, I'm just going to go inject them with saline, see what the response is, and then see if we can get them out of harm's way to do the further evaluation, because we're talking legs being severed, amputations, a lot of things in war that are ugly. So he injected them with saline. And what he found is when he injected them with saline, they would say that their pain was gone. They didn't feel the injury anymore. It was still there. It didn't magically go away. But the idea of this thing being put into the body, the input, changed their output, even with the injury still being present. So Dr. Henry Beecher became known as the father of placebo because he came back to Harvard and started studying this response. How could this happen? It was saline, right? Which is just basically purified with salt water. Like, he was using this versus a powerful opioid and getting the same response because the soldiers didn't know that it was saline and not the other thing. But having that interaction changed the nervous system for it to say, oh, yeah, no, I can't feel what's happening down there, even though that was still there. So that kind of kicked off this whole thing of, what's happening in the nervous system, which then led to people going, oh, what are you saying? It's all in my head. It's all in my head. And there's this weird connotation of that where people feel like psychologically they're weak or soft or whatever it may be, that like, well, no, it's not all in my head. I like have this thing down there. Like, yes, you have tissue irritation that's happening, but that irritation is signaling stuff up to the brain where the brain interprets what's happening. And based on the environment, based on previous memories, based on belief systems, based on the coping, based on is this life or death, it then makes the decision of, am I going to allow myself to experience this injury, or do I need to put it in the back burner because I have other things that need to be focused on? Another quick example, you're walking off the sidewalk, you roll your ankle. Rolling your ankle hurts, right? But if there's a city bus that's coming at you, all of a sudden you don't experience that injury anymore because there's something more threatening coming to you that you need to get out of the way of. So that's what we mean when we say that every injury is a brain injury, because you can have the distal tissue irritation, but the injury process and feeling the discomfort from it, that all happens from the nervous system. And I'm not just going to say just the brain, the entire nervous system, because there's receptors all through the body that's taking on info from the environment, the weather, the am I getting oxygen, all these different receptors in the body that then go to the brain, and then the brain decides what should that output be.
I think of the injury that I had in high school, and like having complex regional pain syndrome. People will ask me like, oh, how did that happen? How did you have that? And it's tough because at the time and for years I would say, oh, well, I had a stress fracture, and then 2 years later I had a stress fracture in the same spot that was worse, and I was on crutches, and basically like the pain kept getting worse, worse, worse. I was having all these crazy symptoms, so I stayed on crutches for 9 months, and then it just messed up the nerves. Like that's how I would explain it to people.
Right.
But now, like having more information, learning more from you and from my own research, and realizing like the doctors did not explain it to me well when I was a kid. And granted, I was also a child, and so like I'm sure like they didn't say this, but if they would have said like, oh, it's in your head, that I would have been like, you don't know anything, like how are you a doctor? Like I would have been so like mad about it. But now, being more mature, I can look back and I'm like, oh my goodness, that was a brain injury. My nervous system was out of whack. Like it was so sensitive. And so maybe we'll get into like complex regional pain in a different podcast. But yeah, I get it. On a personal level, I understand exactly like what that means of every injury is a brain injury.
Right. And the other thing that this doesn't mean is that it's made up.
Yes. It's not fake.
It's not fake. It's real. What you're experiencing is real. We're just trying to have a better understanding of what brought on that real experience of what you're feeling. And the brain is the key player in that. So, like a lot of clients that we have, that, well, like, is it physical or like, is it my internal load? Like, which one is it? It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Yeah, it's not either or.
It's not either or. It's and. And it doesn't mean that if there's not things coming up in a physical test or a physical battery of assessments that are trying to either bring on symptoms or modify symptoms and things aren't changing, that doesn't mean that it's not real. And a lot of people try to compartmentalize it that like, well, if you're saying that it's not physical, then that means that my brain is making it up, which means that it's not real, it's pretend. No, it is a real experience. And what that output of pain is trying to teach you is that something about your living needs to change. Whether it's coping strategies, whether it's fulfillment, whether it's you have too much on your plate, like all that falls into that internal load bucket. Something needs to change. And we got to figure out what is the thing that needs to change so that the request for change signaling, then that output changes.
I also want to add, like, I want to say two things. One, this isn't just rolled ankles. Like, it's not just injuries to the bone or the muscle or whatever. Like, there is a level of, if you're experiencing like autoimmune, or like I had a conversation with someone recently with like fibromyalgia, and like I don't want to pretend like I really know what all of that experience is. But what I do know is that input changes output, and the input that you are having is currently feeding into the autoimmune challenge. And so how do we reframe that, you know? And I think that this is a good first step, like listening to this podcast, obviously. But I'm also going to like go back, and what Dylan said first was like, we talk a lot about this in the book. And can I pitch?
Yeah.
Like, so we have a 4-week hope coaching mini series that Dylan can explain a little bit more, but we talk about this in the mini series. We talk about input changing output. And one of my best friends, she has multiple autoimmune things. She has lupus, like years of history of just a lot of different like medical challenges, to where she has said, and literally I quote, I feel like I've been at war with my body my entire life. she went through this course, and for the first time in her life, she feels hopeful towards her body healing. She feels hopeful towards really recovering from all of this stuff. And I'm not saying that like we're the greatest thing since sliced bread, but I will say that like I believe that we're experts in this and we're experts in hope. And so if you're interested in the Hope Coaching mini series, you can head over to our website. There's a link on our Hope Coaching page there. Obviously, if you haven't read the book yet, I recommend reading the book. The book is a good first place to start as well. But I really think that those two things can serve you if you're struggling with anything that's more chronic that you feel like you're stuck with.
Yeah. Hope is a strategy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a strategy. It's learned and earned, and we've said that so many times, and we will keep saying that.
Mm-hmm.
That hope is learned and earned, and part of the learning is understanding that the brain wants certainty, and we live in uncertainty at all times. And if you look for the uncertainty, you're going to find it. But if you look for the certainty, your brain is going to be able to make better predictions and create a happier being. The Hope Coaching series gets into that aspect of it. One, how do we adapt to the stressors that are placed upon us? Two, how do we start to learn how we become conditioned to different things in our environment that create a response, and that by changing our conditioning process to that thing in the environment, that we can change what our output is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So it's exciting. It's exciting to know that there is hope that can be learned and earned, that it's a strategy, and that we can learn that although we've been attacked by the world and we start to tempt and believe that we should be at war with ourselves and we attack ourselves, that we can change that interaction. We can completely change that to face that adversity, that nope, and turn it into hope and become hope.
Mm-hmm. Well, you all know my story of becoming hope. And if you listen to our first episode of the entire Hope Not No podcast, we share about my chronic pain and then doing my first ever CrossFit competition. And my hope story this week is that Dylan and I actually did a partner competition, which was so much fun because ever since I started CrossFit, I always wanted to be able to do this. But the reality is like Dylan's been doing CrossFit for like 10 years and I've been doing it for like a year. And so I knew that we'd get there someday, but I figured it would probably be another like 3, 4, 5 years down the road. But we had a local competition in our area and they were scaling it to a way where he could do it RX and the elite ability, and then if needed I could scale, or they ended up programming it in such a way that I didn't need to scale any of the movements. And so I got to like compete in it with Dylan and compete RX, which is my first ever CrossFit competition RX. And there was there was three events during the day. And the last event was this like jump rope box jump over or box step over workout. And let me tell you, we were flying. Like I think we got first out of everybody in that specific workout, but like I just got being able to do double unders like consistently recently, and doing that workout was so much fun. We ended up doing basically, I forget the rep scheme, but basically like every 30 seconds one of us was going for 10 minutes straight. And so it was like bam 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 bam. All that to say, that's my hope story, because I love getting to compete. I love that I got to compete with you and be on a team. I love that it was RX, but we also placed third out of everybody, which was like really cool. I wasn't expecting to place by any means, but like we got a cute little medal, and yeah, so that's my hope story.
Can I pitch a little?
Yeah.
So not necessarily a pitch, but I just want to point out something in there.
Okay.
So Brandi had complex regional pain syndrome that was in her left foot.
My right foot.
Your right foot.
Yeah.
In her right foot. The event that we won was double unders and box jumps.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot. Bam, bam, bam.
That's a lot of load on the foot, on the calf, on the Achilles complex. When we started that event, we were trying to figure out who was going to go first, because it was you go, I go type of setup. And I looked at Brandi, and she looked at me, and we made a decision. I was going to start first. Right before that, my jump rope broke. Like my speed rope, like the wire just like, I don't know, exploded and came off. And I'm like, oh, I can't use this. So was able to use a jump rope at the gym, which again, adaptability. Don't get so caught on this piece of equipment that you need this piece of equipment to compete. Like there's other things that you can use. It doesn't have to be that jump rope. So use one from the gym, but a little worried with it, but then I got it and I was like, no, I'm good. So I started it because I'm like, I want to set the pace and I want to go at a reckless pace to just see what Brandi's going to do. Like,
appreciate
will
it.
she follow me into this fire of burning and suffering that we're about to go into, or is she going to pull back? And so it was 24 double unders, or 6 box jumps, 24 double unders, 24 inches. I rebounded every single one, jumped off the top of the box to the jump rope, started doing the doubles, just wanted a reckless pace to just see which Brandi going to do. You made it unbroken through like 6 rounds, meaning that she didn't trip up the double unders, that she really just got down. And then was doing the box work and then coming back. We got near like 10 rounds each in that workout. But I just want to point out the hope there that like complex regional pain syndrome, something that patients, clients with this are told that there is no hope. That you are stuck with this thing the rest of your life and you just better figure it out. You won't run again. You won't jump again. You think you're going to compete again? Yeah, good luck with that. Not going to happen. First place in a double under and box jump workout, in which through the entire competition, through the 3 events, that was the one with the most amount of load going into the area that was previously quote unquote injured.
And it was it was the last of all the workouts, so we were under fatigue.
Yeah. So that's my hope story. The other hope story is Brandi said,
so you just stole my
I've been doing CrossFit for 8, 9, 10 years. I kind of forget, but I've been competing for 7 years and I've been close to the podium. The first time I stood on the podium is on a team with my wife. How freaking cool is that? That's how we crack the code.
You crack the code, baby.
Get a wife that pushes you and that wants to work out with you, and boom, you get to stand on the podium.
Booyah.
Booyah. So it was amazing, and we didn't go in with the expectation of that happening. We went with the expectation of like, this is really cool. We get to compete on a team together, and we get to push each other. We get to have some fun. And again, I've said it before, every time Brandi takes a competition floor with a previous history and showcasing what we started this podcast with, of injuries are lived in the brain. She had physical symptoms in the foot, a lot of physical symptoms in the foot, was able to work through those, was able to develop the strength and physical capabilities that were needed, change what was happening between the ears, change the input to her nervous system. Now was competing as an RX CrossFit athlete and standing on the podium in 3rd place. Like that's incredible. So it was an honor to compete with you.
Thanks, lover.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, and honestly, you get a little worried when you're a married couple going into a competition when you're both extremely competitive, because it can either go really well or it can be like, come on!
Yeah.
Like, let's go! And it was great.
It was awesome.
It was awesome. Perfect.
Yeah.
Wrapping it up?
Wrap it up, baby.
All right. Have a great week, and remember, every day is not just a day to be hopeful. It's an opportunity to become hope.
The Hope Not Know podcast is meant for educational, informational, and personal development purposes only and does not constitute any health or medical advice. If you're looking for specific advice, connect with us to work with a Hope coach. The Hope Not Know podcast shall not be liable or responsible for any loss or damage allegedly arising from any information or suggestions in this podcast.